No amnesty. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, how convenient. Now that we see just how wrong the COVID experts were on everything from school shutdowns to vax mandates, those same experts are telling us that it's just time to move on.
Move on! Nothing to see here! Please, Pittsburgh! Nothing to see here, please!
Writing in The Atlantic, Brown University economist Emily Oster argues that we need to let bygones be bygones on the COVID debate and not relitigate the past. We have to put these fights aside and declare a pandemic amnesty, forgiving the hard calls that people had no choice but to make with imperfect knowledge. L.A. County closed its beaches in the summer of 2020. Now, ex post facto, this makes no sense, but we need to learn from our mistakes and then let them go. Nice try, but no way. First off, there is little sign that those responsible for the disastrous decisions actually learned much, if anything at all. Where were the mea culpas from the shutdown fanatics like Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx? First, they gave horrendous advice to Donald Trump that led to his decision to shut down the entire country. This never should have happened. It did enormous damage to our children, our economy, our constitutional rights, and the American psyche that we're still seeing play out today. Almost everything they advocated, other than maybe washing your hands and covering your face when you sneeze, was wrong. Like this.
If you're never within 6 feet of any single individual, then you've controlled the virus.
We're asking the young people to help us with this mitigation strategy by staying out of the bars, staying out of the restaurants, really trying to distance yourself. Don't get the attitude, well, I'm young, I'm invulnerable.
Do you realize that social distancing was never grounded in science? Never. It was all made up.
Single costliest recommendation that CDC made, that you had to maintain 6 feet of distance, that wasn't based on good judgment and good science.
They were wrong about the vaccines stopping transmission, too.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
Whoops, false. Most Americans thought the vaccine would stop you from getting COVID altogether. Well, of course, we know that was wrong. You also could transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. The CDC director, Walensky, has been vaxxed and boosted, I think, a total of, 5 times? And she has COVID again. They were wrong to dismiss natural immunity as well. It turns out acquired immunity through previous infection does, in fact, provide durable immunity from future infection, and it certainly lessens your symptoms if you get it again. And do you remember what CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta and the rest of the medical cartel had Americans doing?
But we do know the virus can live on surfaces, for example, steel and plastic for up to 3 days. I've used a little glitter here for my kids to show you what the virus might be like. I'm just going to clean all the virus off here. Don't need to do too much. It's a pretty sensitive virus. You don't need to use any kind of specific wipe either. Any household cleaner will do.
Okay, I forgot that one. A few weeks later, CNN had to explain that no, you don't actually need to wipe down your box of spaghetti or leave your Amazon packages in the garage. How embarrassing. But these people were drunk on their own power. Anthony Fauci even wanted to control your holiday plans.
If you get vaccinated and your family's vaccinated, you can feel good about enjoying a typical Thanksgiving, Christmas with your family and close friends.
You've got to be careful when you go into large public indoor spaces where there are a lot of people there, and that's the reason why you should be wearing a mask under those circumstances. I mean, obvious, the N95 is the best, but a regular surgical mask as well as a cloth mask is fine.
Wait a second. It's fine? Is he talking about those filthy masks hanging on everyone's rearview mirrors? The masks that they grabbed before they dashed into a store? Perhaps the worst part of all of this was the vicious campaign to smear and deplatform anyone who questioned their pronouncements, including world-renowned doctors and researchers. Remember the Great Barrington Declaration? From our top academic institutions, they even blacklisted people. These people have been threatened and excommunicated by medical associations and, of course, social media platforms. And despite how wrong the so-called experts were on a myriad issues, the retribution against dissident doctors continues to this day in the name of protecting public health and combating the spread of dangerous disinformation. How ironic, since they're the worst purveyors of it of all. Famed cardiologist and member of my medicine cabinet, Peter McCullough, could even lose his board certification for what he said over the last 2+ years. He told MedPage that he's appealing the recommendation by the American Board of Internal Medicine, and he's persecuted for stating the truth that the government was playing with math on the virus's true lethality. That was another issue of his. Well, now we see that he and others who spoke about the lethality of the virus were right. A new analysis of COVID deaths shows that early on, before vaccines were available, the infection fatality rate for people younger than the age of 70 was below 1%. And for those under the age of 19, it was 0.0003%. Now, given the analysis we just read, it's less lethal than the flu to a majority of the population. That is stunning. So-called public health officials duped America. As the CEO of Pfizer, of course, he became a multi-billionaire. Governors who made the right calls, like Ron DeSantis, Brian Kemp in Georgia, Kristi Noem in South Dakota, were made out to be pariahs by the media medical cartel. Meanwhile, the real data now shows that the anti-lockdown governors were right, and the governors of states like New Jersey, New York, California, Illinois were wrong. Their people knew it, and many of them fled, never to return to those states. There have to be ramifications for the faulty decisions and the mistakes that were made. Otherwise, they'll just do the same power grabs the next time they announce a crisis. I don't know, maybe the next crisis won't be a pandemic. It'll be a climate crisis or a racism crisis. But those same types of experts will feel free to issue unconstitutional mandates and extend emergency powers for as long as they can get away with it.
We need to sustain our investment in COVID. So we still have work to do that. It's going to require ongoing investment from Congress, ongoing investment in our country so that we can continue to make sure everybody in our country has the protection that they need from COVID-19.
How do we get protected from you? It's not enough to say we did the best we could or we tried our best. It's complex. We didn't know all the facts. In the real world, when people make mistakes, there are consequences. When companies make big mistakes, the company changes leadership or goes out of business. Heck, when a football coach keeps losing game after game, he usually gets fired. The public health officials who got COVID wrong, the governors who got it wrong, the senators who refused to speak up for children locked out of schools, they all need to be removed from positions of any authority. They cannot be trusted again with power, period. None of them have admitted they were wrong or shown true repentance. They certainly haven't recommended restitution for those who were materially harmed, including needless loss of life. They were harmed by the mistakes and the knowing falsehoods. None of them have urged that legal protections actually be put in place to prevent these types of abuses from ever happening again. And this is something that Republicans, when they win the majority again, will have to insist upon. The Angle isn't hoping for some symbolic impeachment drama playing out day after day. What we do need, though, is real oversight with professional investigations led by outside experts and backed by the power of the congressional purse. This is why Democrats are so frantic about Trump's pledge to reform the civil service. Because everything they do within the civil service is designed to insulate themselves by any meaningful scrutiny. How dare you question America's doctor, Anthony Fauci? He's been a loyal civil servant for over 40 years. And one of the main reasons that we have a growing populist movement in the United States is that for 2 decades, the American establishment failed to police itself and correct its mistakes. But going forward, this must change. And a reckoning on the disastrous results of our COVID policies, it's a good place to start. No amnesty. And that's The Angle. Joining me now is Congressman Jim Banks, chair of the Republican Study Committee, and Harmeet Dillon, civil rights attorney and chairwoman of the Republican National Lawyers Association. Harmeet, what this Atlantic writer is suggesting is something that, it's kind of like a toxic forgiveness in that it rejects accountability and allows for the same types of individuals to abuse power again. That cannot happen again.
Well, absolutely, Laura. Emily Oster's piece just completely ignores how wrong these people were. She even, jokes about her son yelling at somebody on a trail as if it's some kind of a joke. And these same people are still running our lives. They're still the ones dictating government policy. They're still the ones telling us which doctors can have their licenses and who can speak on the internet. And all the state laws, Laura, for the most part, that allowed governors to abuse our rights are still in place with virtually no changes whatsoever, other than perhaps the duration of an emergency period. So I have to say that this is a bipartisan problem, Laura. Even Republican governors reveled in their power. Even Republican governors declared some businesses essential and non-essential. And just about everybody in the country suffered mightily from this. There are no reparations for the people who lost their jobs, the people who lost their businesses, the people who lost their hope, their loved ones. And people are very angry. They are seething. And until we have some accountability for that and we change the power dynamic that allowed this to happen, we will not have peace in this country over this issue, Laura. And I'll never get those years back that I fought in the courts and lost and lost and lost and finally won. But we can never let this happen again.
Yeah, well, Congressman, we still have our military subject to these vaccine mandates. We still have healthcare professionals who cannot get their jobs back without a vaccine when they have already had COVID, recovered from it, obviously have some durable natural immunity. We know the vaccine doesn't stop transmission anyway, so the whole point of the vaccine mandate has been eliminated. But this still remains. Congress has got to do something about this if you guys win majority.
We have to use the power of the purse, Laura, to force the Pentagon to bring back all of these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who they've flushed out of the military for not taking the vaccine. That's absolutely the case. I just spoke with a leader in the military who I served with in Afghanistan 4 or 5 years ago, who was troubled by the number of troops who he was seeing being flushed out, who are great Americans who want to serve our country. And this administration is continuing to force them out. So this is an area that we have to use the power of the purse when we are in the majority to force them to do the right thing and allow these men and women to serve.
Yeah, Italy finally got rid of its vaccine mandate for all its healthcare workers and is paying restitution, Harmeet, to those who lost their jobs in Italy. That's how far they're going to rectify what went wrong there. Now, a major lawsuit, Harmeet, this is right up your alley, I hope will strike a blow to this collusion between the medical cartel, big tech, and the government censors. Missouri v. Biden is the case, and it's uncovering astonishing evidence of entrenched censorship. And so far, 67 officials or agencies have been accused in the lawsuit of violating the First Amendment by pressuring Facebook, Twitter, and Google to censor users for alleged misinformation. Harmeet, this is so much more pervasive than people realize.
Absolutely, Laura. Again, at the Center for American Liberty, we were ahead of the curve. We filed a lawsuit on this very issue almost 2 years ago now. Rogan O'Hanley, our client, was censored by the California government. Alex Padilla, now a senator. And, court rejected it. The court said, oh, that's not a First Amendment violation. Come to find that the federal government has been doing the exact same thing on a massive scale, and to be very clear, using your tax dollars to hire so-called outside consultants to do their dirty work. Now, even the ACLU has finally woken up from its sleep on the First Amendment and said, this is a violation of the First Amendment. There must be a bipartisan agreement that it is never right for the government to censor our speech and tell private corporations to censor our speech. They cannot use agents to do that. That's a First Amendment conspiracy, and it must be stopped.
Yeah, this is going to have to go to the Supreme Court, and I would hope they would do the right thing here. I want to read one more bit from this piece, Congressman, by Emily Oster from Brown University. Rather than debating the role that messaging about COVID vaccines had in this decline, pediatricians and public health officials will need to work together, and politicians will need to consider school mandates. Congressman, 0.0003% lethality for children. Would a House majority even consider funding schools that force children to get this still experimental shot in their arms before they're able to attend school?
Absolutely not. And we will hold, when we get the majority, we will hold these bureaucrats accountable who force these outrageous mandates on our kids. That we have to start with that. We have to hold them accountable. This bombshell story, Laura, shows me that I thought big tech was the biggest threat to free speech, and now we're finding out that that the Biden administration, the federal government, pushing mandates like these, censorship, attacks on our First Amendment, our free speech. We have to hold them all accountable for it. Representative Dan Bishop from North Carolina introduced a bill today that would strengthen the penalties on those government officials who do this, who push these types of attacks on our First Amendment. We have to hold them accountable for it.
Congressman Harmeet, thank you tonight.